Welcome to MD Longevity Lab, where we're playing the long game. This is a podcast where science meets real life with expert insights, practical tips, and real-world tools to not only live longer, but live better. Our aim is to radically change the way medicine is practiced and enable individuals to age gracefully, maintaining health span and vitality well into their later years. We're your hosts, Dr. Nisha and Dr. Vikas Patel, physicians, partners in life, and parents balancing work, wellness, and everything in between. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to the MD Longevity Lab podcast, Playing the Long Game. I'm Dr. Nisha Patel, physician, mom of three, and co-host of this longevity podcast.
And I'm Dr. Vikas Patel, PR doc, Navy vet, and also apparently the guy who keeps getting asked about testosterone at our dinner parties. Today, we are going to tackle a topic that's everywhere right now, and that is testosterone. This is a good follow-up to the podcast we did last week on perimenopause, menopause, and estrogen depletion. I'm sure you guys have seen tons of ads, clinics, and Instagram reels about these hyped hormones, and testosterone is definitely one of those most hyped hormones. And ultimately, I think there's a lot of confusion about who actually needs testosterone replacement and who doesn't. So today's episode is really your crash course, Testosterone 101. We're going to cover what testosterone actually does for men and women, why levels seem to be dropping across generations, and how to tell if your symptoms might be linked to low T, and also really the risks of chasing a quick fix at a strip mall clinic and not having proper monitoring.
Last episode, we explored one of the most vital hormone transitions for women, and that was perimenopause and menopause, and how shifting estrogen and progesterone levels affect everything from mood and metabolism to brain health. Today, we're turning the spotlight to a super powerful hormone that doesn't get nearly enough attention for women, and that's testosterone. Yes, men produce more of it, but women have it too. And it's essential for both sexes. Testosterone plays a key role in energy, mood, muscle mass, bone strength, libido, and overall vitality.
We're also going to explain why starting testosterone can shut down your body's own natural production, some of the lifestyle changes that can move the needle without medications, and our favorite part, sharing real patient stories. Recently, I took care of a 45-year-old dad of three who came in saying that he was exhausted and really just he's ready to sign up for TRT because all of his buddies were on it. We'll kind of walk you through how we think through that process and how a few months of some targeted lifestyle changes can make your testosterone go from the low 200s up to really normal range in the 500s naturally.
Yep. And we're also going to talk about some of the hacks that people try, like cold plunges and even challenging your spouse to a foot race or a table tennis competition. Some of these actually work to naturally boost your testosterone level. Others, not so much.
So whether you're curious, skeptical, or already eyeing your buddy's testosterone prescription, this episode's probably for you. Think of it as the evidence-based, no BS guide to understanding testosterone and how it might fit into your long-term health. Let's jump in.
All right. So first, we're going to start by defining what testosterone actually is. Testosterone is a sex hormone mostly produced in the testes in men and in smaller amounts in the ovaries in women. The adrenal glands also produce small amounts of testosterone in both men and women. So let's talk about testosterone for men. It drives puberty, sperm production, muscle mass, red blood cell production, energy, mood, and bone density. So it's really a vital hormone for men. The role in women, it's responsible for libido, which is our sex drive, energy, bone health, our muscle mass. So it's also a vital hormone for women equally. We have circulating forms in our body of testosterone. So one of them is total testosterone level, which is a metric that we test for. We also have free testosterone floating around in our blood. There's also something called sex hormone binding globulin. And I like to think of that as the carrier, the transporter for molecules like testosterone in the body. So let's go through some normal ranges of testosterone levels for men and women. For men, we consider normal range to be about 300 to 1,000. Again, 300 is on that low level for normal. For women, we have testosterone in much lower levels, and those average ranges are between 15 to about 90. And the lower that testosterone is, the worse we can feel. So there's several hazards to oversimplifying. The numbers don't always tell the full story, right? Symptoms matter an enormous amount, and that's what we take into consideration.
I think it's very difficult to just look at one of these numbers by itself. So you can't just look at total testosterone. You can't just look at free testosterone. You can't just look at sex hormone binding globulin. You have to look at all three of those to really be able to determine whether somebody has a quote unquote normal level of testosterone. That's the nuance in this. And I hear people say all the time, my testosterone was 250. Yeah, but okay, what does that mean? Like, where was your sex hormone binding globulin, and where was your actual free testosterone? So it's not so simple just to look at one number without having some context. And then on top of that, these are numbers in nanograms per deciliter. The lab references from one lab to another are different, right? And so at some labs, a normal testosterone ends at 800, and then on a different lab, it could be ending at 1100. So you have to also look at what the reference ranges are.
In sex hormone binding globulin, we want those numbers in a decent range. We don't want them too low or too high. If that number is too low, that can be caused by obesity, insulin resistance, and metabolic syndrome. So even if we give a male exogenous testosterone and his SHBG is too low, it's not going to drive up his testosterone. So Vikas, why don't you tell us about some of the trends in testosterone levels over the years?
Yeah, so this is kind of surprising and at the same time alarming. Population wide, studies have shown that the average level for testosterone for the population has been decreasing from 20 to 25% over the last few decades. And that's even after adjusting for the normal age related decline. So, historically, in the early 80s, the average total testosterone level for a man in his 40s was somewhere around 500 to 550. Today, a man of the same age averages closer to 400 to 450. So that's literally 100 nanograms per deciliter lower than where they were just 30, 40 years ago. That drop has been reproduced in multiple studies. There's a landmark study from Massachusetts that found that men in 2004 had about a 17% lower testosterone than men in the same age cohort from 1987. Globally, we're starting to see similar trends are being observed in Europe and Asia. It's not just in our labs here, but this is truly a generational decline. That age-related decline that is supposed to happen falls in the range of about 1% lower testosterone level per year after the age of 30 in men. And there are numerous environmental factors that play a role into why the rate of change can be greater than that normal 1%.
So let's talk about some of the environmental factors that contribute to this decline that we've seen over generations. Rising obesity rates, ultra processed foods, sedentary lifestyles. We are moving way less than a generation before. Poor sleep habits. There's a ton of endocrine disruptors, microplastics, pesticides, BPA, chemicals that are much more prevalent in our day-to-day items that we use than there were 30, 40 years ago, and add chronic stress to the mix. And it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, so now up to 40% of men over the age of 45 have low testosterone. So that's nearly half of men that are entering into their middle years are now having low testosterone levels. So a little bit of real talk, right? Basically, your grandfather at 40 had the testosterone of today's average 30-year-old. And that's really how steep this drop off has become.
Let's go through some of the symptoms of having low testosterone. One of the most notable symptoms is fatigue and low energy level. And another symptom is decreased libido. Also, men can experience erectile dysfunction. And for women, they can experience vaginal dryness and low arousal as well. In both men and women, low testosterone can result in low muscle mass and increased body fat. But this is kind of a circular effect, right?
Definitely a chicken or the egg problem. Low testosterone means that it's more difficult to put on muscle, but if you're not actually moving, it causes you to have low testosterone, right? So there's definitely this phenomena of like one causing the other and vice versa.
Yeah. And for men that have excess body fat, but they're placed on testosterone, they produce something called aromatase. And this literally converts testosterone to estrogen. So it's one of those catch 22s. You really have to fix body fat. Just doing testosterone and ignoring the body fat, you're setting yourself up for failure.
You're causing men to need a man's ear. Yeah, along those lines, low testosterone is also very closely linked with depressed mood, brain fog, and then ultimately it also causes the same things that low estrogen causes, because when you have low testosterone, you also have low estrogen, which means it increases your risk for osteopenia and osteoporosis. We know that estrogens are protective from the standpoint of bone loss.
Yeah, and that's the tricky part. These symptoms overlap with stress, poor diet, sleep deprivation, thyroid issues. So you can't just blame testosterone without testing for it.
I want to kind of get into a little bit of this testosterone replacement therapy explosion and the misuse, right? This is really where it gets messy. So, TRT ads are literally everywhere. And I feel like it's prescribed so often without really following real sound medical guidelines.
Right. There was a VA study that found about 17% of men were prescribed testosterone without ever having done a blood test to check their levels. And only 3% actually got the full evaluation that they were supposed to get. And another huge study found that 20% of men got TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, even though their testosterone levels were completely normal.
It doesn't stop there, right? So the guidelines show that nearly a quarter of men on TRT never had a baseline test at all, and almost half never get their labs rechecked once they're actually on therapy. That's literally like prescribing insulin and never even checking your blood sugar to see whether you need the insulin in the first place.
Exactly. And that's so dangerous because TRT is not candy. It needs to be prescribed carefully with proper monitoring, or you can risk some serious side effects.
So, how does TRT actually affect our natural testosterone production? And this is kind of one of the big questions that we get asked by patients all the time. Um, you know, if I start on TRT, is my body going to stop making testosterone? If you're on it only for a couple months, no, your body doesn't stop. If you're on it for a couple years, yes, your body stops making testosterone. So this is really why your brain and your testes have this communication. And within our brain, your hypothalamus, pituitary, and gonadal axis are what determine your testosterone production. So basically, your hypothalamus sends a signal through this gonadotropin releasing hormone to your pituitary gland, also in your brain. That sends luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone to the testes, telling the testes, hey, we need testosterone.
Is that what they say? Hey, we need testosterone.
Yeah, that's just like, I'm like, hey, I need food. Meatloaf. I need meatloaf. Sorry, old school reference. Your testes get the signal and they make testosterone. But if we give you outside testosterone, your body says, cool, we've got plenty. Your brain shuts down that hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis. And if it's shut down for a long enough period of time, your testes become incapable of producing testosterone again on their own.
So that means your own testosterone production can potentially slow way down, or worse, just never reproduce again. Over time, that can mean testicular shrinkage, infertility, or full on dependence on TRT, which means you are taking this lifelong.
Or small wrinkly balls. Remember I referenced Big Daddy last year?
Why are you obsessed with saying small wrinkly balls?
It's just a movie.
Oh my God. He keeps saying that, and our kids are going to start repeating it. You need to cut it out. Anyway, and not everyone recovers from natural production if they stop. Some men bounce back in months. I know you have some of your patients and you tell them this is temporary and we need to get the lifestyle modifications in order. Others stay low and require lifelong replacement. And that's why it's not a casual decision to go on TRT. Generally speaking, if men stay on TRT for 2 years or more, their ability to produce their own testosterone becomes significantly impaired.
Yeah, and that basically means they've now bought lifelong TRT at that point. So if you're 70 and you're buying lifelong TRT, not the same thing as if you're 35 or 45 or even 50 buying lifelong TRT. So there are some strategies, right? So there are physicians who are very well versed in how to do this, but it is a completely unregulated Wild West when you go to a low T clinic because you don't know whether they're going to be employing any risk mitigation strategies for how to manage your natural production of testosterone. When we are recommending somebody that might need testosterone replacement, we're basically only recommending it for 2 reasons. One, their body is incapable of making testosterone. They have true hypogonadism. Or 2, as a stopgap measure to get the ball rolling, to give them that energy boost, to give them the ability to do a little bit more in the gym. But the goal is to wean them off of it well in advance of that period of 2 years where now they've bought it for the rest of their life.
Yeah. So let's get to my favorite part. And this is how to boost your testosterone naturally, both for men and women. Number one is going to be focusing on not just weight loss, but your body composition. We do full body DEXA scan to assess your body composition, and that's a gold standard of dividing your body into fat, lean muscle mass, and your bone. So we can kind of break down what your body's made up of. If you are just carrying excess body fat, you are creating an enzyme called aromatase. Aromatase converts testosterone into estrogen. So just reducing your body fat alone can reduce that enzyme that you make called aromatase, which means you're not susceptible to that testosterone being converted to estrogen. Visceral fat is especially problematic. So visceral fat has extra aromatase, and that's something we always talk about, that visceral fat is that inflammatory radioactive fat. And if you're looking to optimize your testosterone levels, both for men and women, you really want to make sure that your visceral fat levels are in check.
Exercise is another big one here, right? So resistance training, especially the compound lifts. So these are the big ones, the squats, deadlifts, chest presses. You may ask why compound lifts? Well, they're engaging the largest muscle groups and they're engaging multiple muscle groups at a time. This is providing the largest positive feedback loop to the hypothalamus that, hey, I'm stimulating a bunch of muscles all at the same time. We need more testosterone to basically stimulate testosterone in order to allow the muscles to repair themselves and grow because of the amount of resistance training that I'm doing, the amount of muscle groups I'm activating.
So just lifting alone can boost your testosterone level.
It's one of the best ways to boost your testosterone level.
Another huge one is sleep. Sleeping 7 to 9 hours can increase your testosterone production, and your testosterone spikes during deep sleep and REM sleep. And that's often cut short when we don't sleep correctly. So even 1 week of sleep restriction can drop your testosterone by 15%. That's crazy. One of the largest causes of low T is sleep apnea. And now that so many of us are overweight, I shouldn't say us,
Not you.
not me specifically, but it
Did you
sounds
see these muscles?
no, now that so many of us in this country are overweight, obstructive sleep apnea has become an epidemic. So if sleep apnea is left untreated, you are not going through the normal sleep cycles, right? That those deep sleep REM cycles. Your testosterone levels are going to be low. So getting that sleep study done and properly diagnosing obstructive sleep apnea with treatment can restore your testosterone levels.
It's one of the biggest reasons for low T in men is they're not sleeping enough. Whether they're actually not sleeping enough because they're only budgeting 5 hours of sleep a night, or they're actually in bed for 8 hours, but the quality of their sleep sucks because they're having apneic episodes and they're never going into deep sleep and REM sleep. The net is the same. Their body cannot produce testosterone because it's producing it at night during those deep and REM sleep cycles. So if you don't get to those cycles, you're never going to produce you're never going to produce the testosterone. Hence, your levels are low. I noticed this in my lab work when I was still working a bit more in the ER than I do now, and working a lot of late nights and overnight shifts. My testosterone levels were in the 300s, and and I felt pretty much fine. I felt like I could put on muscle when I was exercising regularly, but the lab values showed that my actual testosterone levels were pretty low. Just going to a little bit less working those night and evening shifts and having a little bit more time in bed, that alone brought my testosterone level up a couple hundred points without doing anything else different lifestyle wise.
So let's move to stress management. We know that cortisol, the stress hormone, suppresses testosterone. And the more stressed out we are, the more cortisol we produce. It's one of the most futile things when I tell patients, like, hey, reduce your stress, because they look at me like I want to punch my face in. Because, yes, it's very easy for us as doctors to tell patients to reduce their stress. How is a completely different story. So, we encourage our patients to work on mindfulness, breath work, socializing, and sharing your life stressors with loved ones or a therapist can certainly help because we've evolved as social creatures. We weren't designed to be isolated. And this socialization, this connection is needed as part of our stress management strategy. So remember, reducing that cortisol level by reducing stress can increase your testosterone levels.
I think for men, especially in current culture, right? The fixation is like, well, I can handle it. I can take care of this on my own. I should be able to just handle whatever's thrown on my plate. That has led to people honestly having poor mental health, men especially having poor mental health because they're thinking that the normal is that they're supposed to be able to handle whatever life throws at them on their own. They don't necessarily share this with their friends or their loved ones. That's not the way that our species evolved. Our species evolved in these social networks where it was completely normal to share life stresses, all the things that are difficult should be shared with other people. And that's how we offload stress. You can't just take stress away saying, well, if I've got 10 projects that I got to take care of, you can't just make those projects go away. But you venting to somebody and saying, oh my gosh, I have all of this to do, that alone takes off some of the burden. Someone else is sharing the load with you.
All right, so let's dive into nutrition and how nutrition alone can increase testosterone levels naturally.
So there are some nutritional things that we can do that can improve our testosterone levels. One is having adequate protein, right? So if we are getting enough protein in our diet, just the act of having more protein in our diet can provide some stimulus for us to increase muscle mass, even without an actual stimulus for building muscle, meaning doing exercise. So if you have a very low protein diet, your muscles aren't getting a stimulus to repair themselves and turn over. If you increase the amount of protein and you're actually getting 20 to 30 grams of protein in a meal, then your muscles get the stimulus that, hey, there's protein around. Let me do some repair activity. That is actually also tied to increasing testosterone levels. Another thing is getting the right fats. So hopefully you guys have heard of omega-3 fatty acids. Those are the good fats for us. Those can help to improve our testosterone because testosterone is made partially of those fats. And then there's also these micronutrients, right? It's difficult to have very good testosterone levels if we don't have high levels of vitamin D, magnesium, and zinc. And most of the time, we don't suffer very much from low levels of zinc. But we do sometimes see patients with low levels of vitamin D and magnesium.
Even though this isn't nutrition, one of the things that can increase your testosterone is decreasing your alcohol consumption. Heavy drinkers tend to have lower testosterone. And this is not just from the alcohol itself, but a lot of this has to do with impaired sleep quality. It goes hand in hand. We are not completely abstinent. I know when we go on vacation or we go out to dinners, we are certainly enjoying ourselves. But I think it's always in the back of our mind that health-wise, this is not a habit that we can go head first in and expect to have good health. And I think it's forced us to just kind of pick and choose when we drink.
Alcohol doesn't really have any nutritional value in our body. Our body just stores it as fat, right? So it is a pretty big caloric load. We store it as fat. And when we're drinking, we're not exercising, right? We tend to drink in the evening, which then impairs our ability to sleep correctly and go through proper sleep cycles. So if you're getting a fair amount of calories from alcohol and you're not eating good quality food, the net is that you're not providing the stimulus that your body needs to be able to improve your testosterone or keep it normal.
Another way to naturally increase your testosterone level is to avoid endocrine disruptors. And I will say this is really hard. I don't like to worry about the things that are out of our control. Let's face it, in the last 3 decades, there are so many toxins, microplastics that are they're everywhere. They're in our blood right now. There's literally microplastics in men's sperm. So it's everywhere. I don't want to get too hung up on this because you can either hide in a bubble and induce so much anxiety over worrying about some of the stuff that we can't control, or you can kind of ignore some of the stuff that's out of our hands and say, okay, I'm going to switch a plastic container to a glass container. So there's some things that you can do for yourselves and your kids that are in your control, but we try not to get too hung up on all these giant environmental factors that literally are anxiety provoking.
I don't think that this is the 90% either.
For sure.
So the 90% is the other stuff. It's the poor body composition, the poor sleep habits, the alcohol, the processed foods. It's the other stuff that is making up the 90%. Then you get into the single digits, which is this stuff, like the microplastics. Yes, in an ideal world, like I don't want any exposure to this, but I don't think it's what's causing the majority of the problem.
Super good point. This is my favorite.
Of course, this is your favorite.
One of the natural ways to boost your testosterone is by competition. If anyone knows me, I love competition. Anything. It could be who can eat this hot dog the fastest, who can beat me in a foot race.
Right. You want to compete in the Nathan's Staten Island hot dog contest?
No, but I would. I love competition.
I want to see that.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll add that to my bucket list.
And you're just going to fill your body up with nitrates after this podcast? Yeah.
I mean, once in a while, a hot dog is fine.
Chicago style.
Yes, for sure. Competition is a super important way that we can naturally boost our testosterone. Simply engaging in competition can cause a measurable short-term testosterone boost. And this is irrespective of winning or losing.
Yeah. So basically, what you're saying is pick the Bears. Let's go Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams. But I shouldn't hold my breath because they typically lose. And I should just pick a better football team to cheer for, a team that's going to win.
Well, you sitting and watching football for 3 hours a day, yes.
Or 4.5.
4.5 or 6. We generally have this rule. If you're watching sports longer than you're playing a sport, it's probably too much. So we try and keep that in check. But lean into those competitive outlets, pick up basketball, a 5K race, or challenging yourself with a new PR at the gym, right? Now you're going to deadlift a certain amount of weight. Any competition, whether it's with someone else or yourself, is going to boost your testosterone level. And I love that little tidbit that it's irrespective of whether you win or lose. I lose at
That's
everything.
right. I don't care about winning.
He doesn't. I care about winning, but the irony is that I'm 1 in 425 or maybe 4,025 in competitions with Geekus. He's beat me in tennis, ping pong, foot races, deadlift competitions, and it's usually me challenging you to these competitions.
Why would I challenge you?
I know, but one of these days I'm going to win. Like, I think I've won one time in tennis, and I think you were post
Ping
night
pong.
shift.
Ping pong.
Yeah.
You beat me in ping pong
Yeah.
pretty regularly.
Yeah, but I feel like I'm still a winner when it comes to that boost in testosterone. And I am.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A few other things that I think are important: sunlight and circadian rhythm. So morning sunlight exposure helps to realign our circadian rhythm. And this is very closely tied with how our body is going to then subsequently regulate our hormone cascade. So if you have some sunlight exposure in the morning and your circadian rhythm is tied into the clock correctly, then our body gets the cues properly to produce testosterone when we go to bed. And this is part of this lifestyle modification that I think is very important.
I think it's important to know too. I sometimes hear these wellness influencers without children that are like, get 20 minutes of morning sunlight. And if you have little kids, that's nearly impossible. So things like just putting down your phone and not looking at the blue light and looking outside the window, that stuff is going to help. But some of the goals are pretty lofty when it comes to that morning sunlight.
This is all about whether you're symptomatic or not, right? So if you're symptomatic and you have low T, then the natural things that we can do, you have to start to prioritize. And that's where I think it matters. If you feel fine and your testosterone is low and you've got screaming kids, why would you go outside and sun your ass, right? There is also a little bit of a transient increase in testosterone from ice baths and cold showers. It could transiently increase your testosterone and dopamine, and that can indirectly support a little bit of energy and drive. But this isn't really a great long-term solution to increasing your testosterone because this is a very transient increase that occurs.
Something that's important to note, expectant fathers and dads with newborns tend to have lower testosterone levels. And that's a normal physiologic response. So we get increased prolactin levels both in the mother and the father when we have a baby. And that's that attachment hormone. Naturally, that triggers testosterone to go low. So it is normal when you are expecting, or in the first year that baby's born, libido goes down.
In that first year of having a newborn is not the best time to get your testosterone checked. You're not sleeping well. You have this, exactly what you're talking about, the hormonal response, the normal hormonal response. And there's a combination of factors. This is not when you should be like, oh, let me go on testosterone therapy because my testosterone is low. This is what's actually physiologically supposed to happen during that period.
All right. So let's recap. We touched on all the things that are naturally going to increase your testosterone. And that is weight loss and fat reduction. So reducing your body fat, exercise in the form of resistance training, sleeping properly, and addressing any sleep apnea issues, stress management. We talked about nutrition and protein, alcohol in moderation, avoiding endocrine disruptors as much as possible, though we emphasize that this is like one of the lowest on the totem pole. That competition effect, so competing with yourself, family members, friends, that also helps. Getting some morning sunlight, which will support your circadian rhythm, and cold exposure.
I think it's probably worth talking a little bit about the quick fix trap. We had touched a little bit on the TRT clinics and quite a bit of aggressive marketing that goes into those clinics and the low T commercials. What's really missing from this approach is the discussion of why your testosterone is actually low. And I'm not saying that there are not clinics who do this correctly, but a lot of them are run by people who are not necessarily qualified to do this type of treatment. And there is no real discussion on, well, what was it that caused your levels to be low in the first place? Do you truly have hypogonadism? Or is this that you have poor sleep and you actually have sleep apnea? Or is your body composition all messed up and you just don't have enough muscle mass plus an increase in body fat percentage that's causing this? Do you have impaired glucose tolerance? Or are they screening to see, is this really just that you have your hypothyroid and you don't even have low testosterone? You really just have hypothyroidism.
Yeah, so let's touch on the risk of jumping straight into testosterone replacement therapy. A lot of men that jump into TRT prematurely can face fertility issues. So their sperm production can tank and they can also experience testicular atrophy. You can get an elevated red blood cell count with TRT therapy, and that can increase your clot risk. Also, there's some cardiovascular risk associated with TRT that's still kind of up for debate, but it's a possibility that we keep in the back of our mind. And emotional dysregulation, we call it roid rage. I think that was the term for it. But if you're on exogenous TRT, you can get pretty angry.
There is a difference that occurs. And there's a big difference between people being on TRT and staying in the physiologic range versus people going to these levels of, occasionally I'll get a patient, we check their testosterone level. They have not disclosed that they're on TRT and their testosterone level comes back at 2,500. And, this will just be a regular 55-year-old guy. And physiologic range, he should not be above 1,000, but his testosterone levels through the roof. And I'm like, what are you injecting in your butt? Right? Like, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, I've been on this for the last 2 years. Right. And I'm like, okay, does anybody check it and see where your levels are? Because you don't look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Why are your levels this high? Right. So there are these side effects that can occur the longer that you're on the medicine. And we have to pay some attention to where these ranges are supposed to be.
Yeah, and that there's that risk of lifelong dependency, right? Once you're on it, a lot of patients feel that they have to stay on it. They're afraid to get off of it because they're not going to feel well. But then we talked about that negative feedback loop. If you're taking exogenous testosterone, it's giving the signal to your body that your own body does not need to produce it because, hey, I've already got enough.
Yeah, I don't think that there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of anecdotal evidence on bodybuilders that have been on testosterone for long periods of time that have not suffered early death. Most of those people were on relatively on the how higher is their testosterone. They weren't at these like 2,500, 3,000 levels of testosterone for extended periods of time. They were on lower levels of testosterone. If you're staying at the high end of the normal physiologic range during TRT, you're not going to suffer the negative consequences. The things that we're talking about is what happens when you're outside of the normal physiologic range. And there are significant potential risks that can occur when you're on those really supra therapeutic doses of testosterone. So, really, what we're advocating for is that there's a good medical approach to TRT. And that really starts with identifying the reversible causes first. Your physician should be looking into taking a detailed history, taking baseline lab work and saying, hey, wait, maybe this is due to body composition. Maybe this is due to oh, you snore a lot at night. Your partner says that you keep waking up at night. And maybe you have sleep apnea. We need to order a sleep study before we just throw you on TRT. So I think identifying those reversible causes is the first line treatment.
Yeah. And let's be real, in this country, we love a quick fix. We want to keep the same diet, skip the workouts, eat the junk food, and just inject our way to better health. So it's no surprise that we see a lot of obese patients with excess body fat being put on testosterone therapy as if that's going to magically melt the pounds away or improve their health. It doesn't work like that. We had discussed fat tissue actually contains that enzyme called aromatase, which converts testosterone into estrogen, especially the visceral fat around your organs. So if you're carrying extra fat, your body is literally turning that extra testosterone that you're injecting, that expensive testosterone, into more estrogen. So the real issue isn't low T, it's the obesity that's driving this hormonal imbalance in the first place. So you can't out inject a crappy lifestyle.
I mean, let's face it, this is what causes man boobs, right? We mentioned this earlier. When you see a dude that needs a man's ear, right? They have low T. They're overnourished, and the testosterone that their body is making is being aromatized by their fat tissue into estrogens, and they're actually growing breast tissue. That's not what we want, right? We want to reverse that process. And that is not as simple as, hey, let me just inject some more testosterone. That will not fix the problem. Can you get some sort of energy boost out of injecting testosterone? Yes. Are you going to put on muscle just because you just inject testosterone? Absolutely not. You still have to have the training stimulus. You still have to actually put in some work at the gym in order to tell your body, let me use the testosterone appropriately and put on muscle tissue. Otherwise, if you're just overweight and injecting testosterone, your man boobs are just going to get bigger.
Yeah, so this is why it's so important to look at that root cause and take that functional approach when it comes to your health. We like to look at the full picture. We talked about sleep, stress, nutrition, weight, alcohol, and other comorbidities. And we also emphasize testing properly. We test our patients for total testosterone, free testosterone, and we do not ignore that important hormone, sex hormone binding globulin, because remember, that's like carrier for testosterone. We also have to consider these underlying medical conditions like sleep apnea that we've emphasized, pituitary disease, metabolic syndrome, obesity. And so, looking at it from the longevity lens, testosterone isn't just about performance, it's about maintaining function and independence throughout life.
Yeah, to really show what this looks like in real life, we mentioned earlier about a patient that I'd taken care of not too long ago. So, this 45-year-old dad of three who came in complaining of just feeling exhausted, just low energy, even low sex drive. And his testosterone levels were borderline low. They were in that low 300 range, and like a lot of guys, he came in saying, I have a bunch of friends who are on testosterone, just put me on it. And the conversation is difficult to have with patients, but my preference is to say, well, I have no problem with putting you on it if you need to be on it. But let's just try a couple lifestyle modifications first, see where you can get with that, and then if that's not working, certainly we can put you on some testosterone replacement. So he agreed after we had a good discussion on this, and that's exactly what we did. We worked on some of the fundamentals. We worked on sleep, we worked on stress management, cutting back on a little bit of alcohol, and dialing in his nutrition and his resistance training regimen. You know what? After 3 to 4 months, when we rechecked his testosterone, he goes from the 300s into the 500s, and he's reporting back that I feel like myself again. And this was all done without having to put that needle in your leg.
And he felt alive again, right? His energy was restored, his mood was better, His strength was there. His libido came back in spite of having 3 little kids, because let's face it, that can certainly take the wind out of your sails.
Yes.
Yeah. And he still had his own natural testosterone production intact. So if he had just gone to a tea clinic, they would have put him on tea. And this poor guy at 45 would be stuck on this, then depleting his own testosterone production. So that's why it's so important to go through the root cause. It is way harder to do the work, right? The easy thing to do is to take the shortcut. But what we've learned is shortcuts don't work. There is no replacement for the lifestyle modification.
TRT should be a tool in order to get your lifestyle modification in order. So if your numbers are low and you feel like I just can't even motivate to start this process, then TRT should be the bridge, assuming you don't have those other major issues like hypogonadism or sleep apnea, like that's all been screened for, and you don't have these other problems, then TRT can be the bridge to give you some of the stimulus to make it like, I have a little bit more energy. Now I can go to the gym. But it's a bridge. That's it. You cross the bridge and then you wean off of the TRT because now you've implemented the lifestyle modification. The lifestyle modification is what should be doing the bulk of the work long term.
Yeah. And that's why we emphasize playing the long game. That's what that means, right? TRT has its place, but it's not the first tool that we use out of a bag. Sometimes your body just needs the right conditions to be firing on all cylinders again. We talked about HRT for women in our last episode and compare that to power steering. You still have to drive the car and know how to direct that steering wheel. While HRT can be that power steering and really dial it in, it's not a replacement for the lifestyle factors.
Exactly. I'm not against TRT and I think it is a wonderful tool, but that's exactly what it is. It is a tool and it needs to be used correctly.
So here's the takeaway: testosterone, we've learned, is critical for both men and women. And yes, levels are going to decline with age, but lifestyle, environment, and health choices can accelerate that decline. And lifestyle, environment, and health choices can also preserve your numbers as well.
We can do a lot naturally, right? Sleeping properly, lifting weights, stress management, diet, and all of this is well before we get to the consideration of medication.
And if you do decide to look into testosterone replacement therapy, please do it safely with a physician who looks at the whole picture, not just a single blood test.
This is why we spend hours with patients, right? In order to optimize someone's health and optimize their hormones, you can't do it in a 15-minute visit. This is not a one size fits all. I think we have to spend time with patients in order to get this right and make sure that we're doing the right thing for the patient. Really, thanks for joining us today on this Testosterone 101. I think in a future episode, we are going to cover a little bit more and go in depth on what testosterone replacement therapy actually looks like. The goal here was just to give you guys the basics on the things that go into low testosterone for the vast majority of our population, and hopefully give you some tips on how to increase your testosterone before jamming that needle in your muscles in order to replace it. If you found this helpful, please share with a friend, and maybe that guy from your group chat who just bought his third bottle of Titan Testosterone XL. But I hope you guys enjoyed this.
Until next time, keep playing the long game.
Thank you for playing the long game with MD Longevity Lab. You can visit us at www.mdlongevitylab.com to learn more about how we can support you on your journey. Stay connected with us on social media at MD Longevity Lab for tips, updates, and behind-the-scenes insights. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love it if you subscribed, left us a rating, or shared it with someone you know who's also playing the long game. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.